Does your blood work confuse you? On episode 710 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we welcome back Dr. Ken Berry and discuss his book, Common Sense Labs, a practical guide to decoding your blood work and taking control of your health. Welcome to the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, the largest and longest running health and fitness podcast dedicated to people over 40. Whether you're looking to lose weight, get stronger, or improve your health and age better, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Coach Allan, an online health and fitness coach and author of The Wellness Roadmap. Each week, we dive into practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and fitness. If you're ready to look, feel, and perform your best, no matter your age, this podcast is the perfect place to start. Let's get you on the path to a healthier, fitter, and more energetic version of yourself. I hope you'll join us each week, and together we can unlock your full potential. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast. I'm really glad that you're here and hope you're having a great time. Can you believe it's already football season? Yep. My favorite college team kicked off this weekend, and, we are starting the season right now, and it's already up here in North Carolina starting to cool off, and this duck wants to go south. Really wants to go south bad. So, it's coming. It's coming. I'm confident that's going to happen for me real soon here. But anyway, I'm glad that football season has started, but I kind of wish I wasn't this far north while it's happening. And you may say North Carolina isn't north, but I'm sorry, it has north in the name. And it's cold here as far as I'm concerned. Once it drops down below 70, you lose me on that. I don't have that back home, and I'm ready to get back there where it never gets below 70 degrees. Anyway, let's go ahead and get on the line with Ken Berry. Our guest today is an author, speaker, and dedicated family physician practicing near Nashville, Tennessee. For over 2 decades, he has been committed to helping patients overcome obesity, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes. His mission is to empower people with the knowledge and tools to reclaim their health through the proper human diet. He is a board certified in family medicine and has been awarded the degree of fellow by the American Academy of Family Physicians. With no further ado, here's Ken Berry. Dr. Berry, welcome back to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you, Coach Allan. It's a pleasure to finally be back with you.
Yeah, I was looking at it. It was all the way back. We actually interviewed at the very beginning of 2020. That episode went live April 20th of 2020. So it's been over 5 years.
Yeah.
I've been following your stuff. You're on YouTube. It's always on point, and it always draws me in. And I love how you make things seem so simple that on the outside aren't always simple. But your book is called Common Sense Labs, a practical guide to decoding your blood work and taking control of your health. And I think it is written in such a way that you can just read it and understand it, and you don't have to be a scientist or a doctor to do that. It's written for a practical person to just go through and understand it. So it's very well written, but it's also quite comprehensive. So this is the kind of book, and I don't say this often, but this is the kind of book you want on your bookshelf, so that when you go in to talk to your doctor and you've got those lab results and they're all over the place and you're looking at reference ranges and all these other things, and you're not quite pulling it all together, but this book definitely will help you ask the right questions so you can work with your doctor to get the right answers.
Yeah, that's exactly why we wrote the book and how we wrote the book, so that just somebody who's just a regular patient who doesn't know anything about human physiology or molecular biology, they can read this and go, oh, okay, I get it. Because in reality, many of these things are quite simple. And the problem is that many doctors don't go out of their way at all to explain these things to their patients. In many cases, doctors don't understand these lab tests well enough to be able to explain them simply. And I think that's one of the prime evidences that somebody really understands something is if they can explain it so that pretty much anybody can go, oh, okay, I see. And so I think right off the bat, let me say, I think one of the best uses for this book is to buy a copy for your doctor or your dietitian or your health coach if they don't have a copy, because many of these labs that we talk about in this book are not commonly ordered, but should be, because they absolutely unlock the secrets of your metabolic health. And without some of these tests, your doctor and therefore you as the patient are operating blind. You just don't know where you're at metabolically speaking.
Well, it was just funny because I remember going to a doctor and telling him, I want a more comprehensive lipid panel. If you're going to want to put me on a statin, I want to know why I'm on a statin, and it can't just be because this is a very big number and I don't like it. I want to know more. He didn't want to test. I found another doctor is what I ended up doing. But, so I get it. Because sometimes you get a test and the numbers aren't what you want them to be, or they're not what the reference range is. And so now you got one more thing to worry about. We don't need more things to worry about. We've got enough going on. But should we be testing regularly? Should we be testing all these things? What test or not to test? That's the question.
Yeah, in many cases, especially if you're over the age of 40, if you're overweight, if you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, if you have hypertension, high blood pressure, or metabolic syndrome, high triglycerides, if you have any of those things, then you need to be testing regularly. And here's the big thing that many doctors dismiss: if you're having symptoms that you can't explain. So if let's just say a random person today is feeling very tired and fatigued, but last night they were up all night because their cat was having kittens. Well, yeah, of course, that's a readily explainable reason why you have tiredness and fatigue today. But if you're like, no, I feel like I sleep good every night, but every day I'm just fatigued and draggy, got no energy, don't really have any get up and go, don't really have any want to, right? Many times doctors will just dismiss those symptoms. And I can tell you right now, definitively, it's well documented in the medical research that fatigue can be a symptom of at least 100 very serious medical conditions. Anxiety. A lot of docs just say, oh, you're just an anxious person. Here's a prescription. And they don't do any blood work whatsoever before that diagnosis of anxiety. Inappropriate, borderline malpractice. Anxiety should be a diagnosis of exclusion. And we talk about this in the book. Many diagnoses should be a diagnosis of exclusion. And I want everybody to pay careful attention to this. I'm going to explain what that means. So what is a diagnosis of exclusion? That means if you go into your doctor and you've read a couple of articles about fibromyalgia, right? And you're like, hey, I got a bunch of these symptoms. And you go see your doctor and your doctor does a little cursory physical exam that literally takes 30 seconds. And they say, yeah, I think you're right. I think you've got fibromyalgia or depression or anxiety or any of these other many other diagnoses like this. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to start you on Lyrica or gabapentin for your fibromyalgia. They just made that diagnosis. That is 100% inappropriate. And it can also be quite dangerous because, first of all, there's about 50 different diagnoses that can masquerade as fibromyalgia, including syphilis, HIV, cancer, all kinds of different things, low progesterone, low testosterone. Lots of things can masquerade. Undiagnosed thyroid conditions can masquerade as fibromyalgia or depression or chronic fatigue syndrome or anxiety. So if your doctor just prescribes you something for one of those diagnoses that I just mentioned, and they didn't check a bunch of tests, a bunch of labs, maybe a imaging study, then you truly have no idea whether you actually have fibromyalgia, depression, anxiety, or chronic fatigue syndrome. Your doctor didn't do the required work. They didn't do it correctly. And now, not only do you still not have an accurate diagnosis of what's actually going on with you, but now you're taking a synthetic pharmaceutical drug that has 2 pages worth of potential side effects, some of which are very serious side effects. These prescription medications are not innocuous. They're not safe. They can be used safely, but the doctor didn't do the work that a doctor should do, and therefore you're taking a prescription pharmaceutical for something you don't even have. That is very problematic and can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that happens, but we've got to be aware of it. And sometimes we're part of the problem, because it's well, I've got a symptom, so here's the solution. I leave the doctor's office in less than 7 minutes every time, and I always have a prescription, is kind of the mindset. But one of the things you said in the book, and I thought this was one of the things where I just would have got if I had the electronic version of the book, but if I had the paper version of the book, I probably would have just highlighted, rabbit-eared this page because I'd want to go back and read it over and over again, is don't manage to markers. And unfortunately,
Exactly.
That's what a lot of doctors are doing, is if this, then that.
Exactly. And so I hinted on this earlier, but now let me say very clearly that as a patient, your symptoms are just as important and often more important than what the lab results are. And let's use hypothyroidism. Okay, let's use Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Let's talk about the thyroid first as an example. So you got fatigue, you're gaining weight, even though you're trying to eat a better diet. Your eyebrows are getting thin out here. You can't really sleep good. You don't feel rested. You're tired all the time. You always feel cold. All of these are kind of red flag symptoms that, hey, there may be a thyroid problem here, right? Many doctors will check your TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is not actually made by the thyroid. It's actually made by the anterior portion of the pituitary gland in your brain. It's not even a thyroid hormone. They'll check that, and if it's normal, then they will pronounce your thyroid healthy. Oh, it's not your thyroid. Everything looks fine. And they always phrase it as, I checked all your labs and everything looks fine. Now, if anybody knows anything about labs, they know that if they checked everything, that would cost about $10 million. So no, they didn't check everything. In many cases, they checked only the bare minimum of labs that will keep them out of trouble with the medical board and keep them on the panel for your health insurance. They didn't check everything, and I don't think they should phrase it that way. They should say, of the labs I checked, everything appears to be normal. That'd be a much more accurate way to put that. But if they just checked a TSH or a TSH and a T4, you can have severe Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And all your labs were normal that they checked. You can have a completely normal TSH and have severe Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Only by checking the full thyroid panel will they get a complete picture. And TSH is on that panel, but it's only 1 out of 5 or 6 labs that should be checked to thoroughly evaluate your thyroid gland. We talk about the full thyroid panel in the book, and we explain to you, the reader, what each test kind of does. But then also in the book, if your doctor's like, oh, I don't think your insurance will even pay for this test, well, we actually include the ICD-10 codes that your doctor can put on the billing form that will get your insurance to pay for the needed labs so that they can thoroughly evaluate your thyroid gland. And this goes for many other labs we talk about in the book as well. So that's just one example of many that the doctor actually checks. Labs, they drew blood, and you're a patient. You're not a doctor. You don't know what tests should be ordered without this book. And then they pronounce, nope, it's not your thyroid. And this is why so many millions of people, Coach Allan, are on antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs inappropriately. is because the doctor checked a TSH and like, no, I don't know what's going on with your depressed mood and your fatigue. Maybe it's depression. Let's try some Zoloft. And so now you're on a prescription that is completely inappropriate, that you don't even need, that can have permanent side effects. And you're also still suffering permanently from the undiagnosed Hashimoto. So not only did they not help you, they actually put you at greater harm by what they did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. So I would say, anytime your doctor wants to put you on a medication, this book is going to help you understand, okay, we didn't look at that. We didn't look at this. I want that answer before I decide I'm going to take the chance with the side effects on this drug.
Right. And let me be very clear, Coach Allan. I think sometimes the benefits of a prescription medication absolutely outweigh the possible side effects. I think that's true in many, many cases. But to blindly put somebody on something without checking a thorough workup is inappropriate.
I agree. So now, if you're over 40, there's like zero reason you shouldn't be going in for a comprehensive annual exam. In the book, you identified the 5 basic categories. Could you briefly go over those and why each of those would be important to us?
So as far as like the metabolic health?
Yeah, you got, nutrient status, immune system, inflammation, organ and blood cell, hormonal health, and metabolic health.
Exactly. And so it's very important after the age of 40. Now, let me just add a caveat. If you're over 40 and you've adopted a proper human diet and you're now out exercising and you're getting plenty of healthy sunlight and eating plenty of healthy animal fat, and you're like, dude, I feel amazing. I haven't felt this good since I was 18. Then
let's define that, because you have a very specific definition for the human diet.
Yeah. And so a proper human diet is by definition a low carbohydrate diet. No human on planet Earth needs more than 100 grams of carbohydrates a day. This is very clear, very obvious from studying human physiology, archaeology, anthropology, and paleoanthropology, that's the rabbit holes I've been going down for the last 7 years. It's very clear. Nobody needs over 100 total grams of carbohydrates a day. Nobody needs to eat anything with added sugar. Nobody needs sugar. You don't need sugar in your diet. Your body can make that sugar if you need it. You need a nutrient-dense diet that has plenty of vitamins and minerals and fatty acids and amino acids. That's the things that when your body is hungry, that's what your body's looking for. It's not looking for something that's been advertised and you saw it and it's really yummy. That's going to lead to disease. That's not going to lead to optimal health at whatever age you are. A proper human diet is uninflammatory. It's not going to cause inflammation in your body. That would make it improper, right? A proper human diet is a diet that humans have been eating for thousands of years. And so if something has been invented in the last few decades, like vegetable seed oil, cotton seed oil, like the artificial sweeteners, then you need to be much more cautious about including those in your diet, because things that we've been eating for 1,000 years, people think that the only way to do nutrition experimentation is if at the tough school of nutrition, right? And we have to do this formal thing. That's what the last 10,000 years have been, is the largest nutritional experiment ever conducted on humans. That's what that is. And that's why many grandmothers and great-grandmothers have specific ideas about what you should eat and what you should avoid, because they were taught that by their grandmother or great-grandmother. And you think of that as, well, I mean, that's just kind of old wives' tales or anecdotal. Well, in many cases, that's how we know about the common sense way of operating in our world, is from the trial and error that went on for thousands of years before we were born. So ancestrally appropriate, uninflammatory, nutrient-dense, low in carbohydrates that doesn't cause any chronic disease. And so we can take type 2 diabetes, for example. Type 2 diabetes shouldn't exist at all in children and should be very, very rare in adults. But yet, it's so common in children now that there are special type 2 diabetes clinics at children's hospitals. That's how common it is. And then in adults, there's an epidemic of type 2 diabetes in every modern society around the world. This is 100% coming from the diet. This is not genetic. This is not, oh, we don't know, maybe it's the ozone. No, we know exactly. And the way we know exactly is because currently there's over 1 million people eating a carnivore diet right now all around the world. And tens of thousands of them have reversed their type 2 diabetes completely by eating a carnivore diet. Now, is there something magic in meat and eggs that treats and reverses type 2 diabetes? No, it's just that the carnivore diet is the lowest carbohydrate diet that a human can possibly eat. Now, some people can reverse their diabetes, type 2 diabetes, by eating a low carbohydrate diet, under 100 total grams a day. For many people, that'll get their A1C back down to normal. But I want more than that for you. I don't want you to just have a normal A1C. I want you to have a normal A1C and a normal fasting insulin level. That's one of those mini tests that we talk about in the Common Sense Labs book that the average doctor does not check, doesn't know they should check. They're very quick to want to treat a type 2 diabetic with insulin, but they're very hesitant to order an actual insulin level in your blood. It's very odd, right? And so some people have to cut the carbs down more than 100 total grams a day. They have to cut it down somewhere between 20 and 50 total grams a day, which makes your diet a ketogenic diet. It's not a fad. It's a very old way of eating. Even back, there are books written back in the 1800s, Coach Allan, that say, hey, I had this patient with diabetes, and when I put them on just basically a meat diet, their diabetes went away. We've known this for hundreds of years, that cutting the carbohydrates out of your diet makes type 2 diabetes go completely away. And so those are kind of the principles of a proper human diet. And I go into much more detail on some of my YouTube videos about all those things. And so the proper human diet spectrum is anywhere from low carb with real whole one ingredient foods to keto with real whole one ingredient foods. I have to say that because now keto bread and keto cookies are in the supermarket. And that's marketing. That's not keto. Okay. Don't fall for that. Keto is real whole one ingredient, low carbohydrate foods. That's what a ketogenic diet. So low carb, keto, ketovore, which is less than 10 total grams of carbohydrates a day. Some people need to do that to reverse their prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And then for people who fatten very easily or develop diabetes very easily, like me, I used to be severely obese and prediabetic. Then carnivore is the lowest carbohydrate option that's filled with foods that humans have eaten for thousands of years. We were eating meat and eggs and fish before recorded history, Coach Allan, right? Mm-hmm. And so obviously you can't say that the carnivore diet is a fad diet because we've been eating those foods for over 10,000 years. That's not a fad. That's just the lowest carbohydrate option on the proper human diet spectrum. A lot of people think that a ketogenic diet's a fad diet. No, it's literally lots of fatty meat and eggs with the yolk and low carb vegetables, a few low carb nuts, and a few berries. That's a ketogenic diet. All those are foods that we've been eating for over 10,000 years. You can't call that a fad. You look silly if you call that a fad. Now, if you're using exogenous ketones and eating keto bread and keto pie and making, keto desserts, yeah, that's a fad diet. That's not going to get you where you want to be. But if you actually honor a proper human diet and the principles that go along with it, you can reverse type 2 diabetes completely and keep it away for the rest of your life by eating somewhere on the proper human diet spectrum. And I mentioned insulin. Let's talk about that next because we really cover the insulin test really well in this book. Because even though I've been talking about it, and literally my videos talking about insulin have millions of views. So you would think by now every doctor and dietitian would know about the fasting insulin test. And they would know that if someone's insulin level is high, they're eating. And I think the reason more doctors don't know about it is the pharmaceutical companies don't talk about it or advertise it because they don't have a single drug that will safely lower your insulin. Now, they've got Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro, and they will indirectly lower your insulin, but they do it by turning your stomach and giving you chronic nausea. So you stop eating, basically. So that makes you stop eating all the junk food. So your insulin level comes back down to normal, right? There is no pill at the pharmacy or injection that's FDA approved for lowering your insulin. So you want to ask your doctor, please check my insulin next time I come in for fasting lab work, because that's going to give me good information about my overall metabolic health. Many doctors will say, I've never heard of that. That sounds like something an endocrinologist should check. I wouldn't even know how to interpret that. Well, guess what? On page 27, we tell you how to interpret your fasting insulin test. If he says, oh, your insurance company won't even pay for that, we've got the ICD-10 codes that will pay for a fasting insulin. And even if you have to get it done yourself from an independent company like ownyourlabs.com or from a standalone LabCorp or Quest, they have labs like in strip malls. You can just go get any test. It's about $10 to $20. So it's not like it's a huge expense to get your fasting insulin checked. It's one of the most important bedrock tests for metabolic health, and the average doctor still does not know to check it and doesn't know what to do with the results. But with this book, you can know. But not only can you know, but you can teach your doctor, because doctors were, at least at one time, good students, right? Or they wouldn't have made it through medical school. So once you kind of put this bug in their ear and say, look, my fasting insulin used to be 35 and now it's 12. And the only way I was able to do that was by eating a better quality diet and maybe getting more exercise, building more muscle. That's what fixed my insulin. You should be checking this on all your patients, doctor.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a couple really important things there, and I have a question for you. One is you had a previous number and you have an after number, and that just means that you're testing for the problem, and then you're retesting so that you're seeing that what you're doing is leading to the change that you're after. And so I think that's important, is to know, okay, don't just test once and say, okay, I'm eating better now, so everything's good. You still want to go test again to see if, after a period of time, to make sure that your body is adapting to the new diet.
Absolutely. And this is super important for anybody with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, right? Because the average medication for type 2 diabetes will lower your A1C 3 or 4 tenths of a point. So if your doctor puts you on the highest copay type 2 diabetes medication, it might lower your A1C from 9 down to 8.6. That, and it lowered it, so that's good. But what about all the potential side effects? What if there was a dietary intervention that would lower your A1C from 9 down to 5.6 with no side effects? Seems to me that would be much preferable.
Weight loss.
Yeah, it seems to me that would be much preferable, but the average pharmaceutical company is not interested in that at all, because there's no $1 billion to be made there. And it's sad but true, the average doctor's education, 80 to 90% of their continuing education comes straight from the pharmaceutical companies. That's who does the continuing medical education for the average doctor.
Yeah. The question I had is this, is you're talking about the fasting insulin test, and our insulin fluctuates throughout the day. There's also the spit test that you do multiple times a day to get kind of a daily, I guess, average, for lack of a better word. It's probably a better word, but should we be doing the spit test, or is the fasting insulin test good enough?
For the vast majority of people, getting a fasting insulin check once every 3 to 6 months, if they have prediabetes, they're overweight, type 2 diabetes, even any metabolic, right? Metabolic syndrome, hypertension, they need a fasting insulin every 3 to 6 months until they figured out how low in carbohydrates their diet needs to be. You can do a saliva test. I'm not a big fan of those. I think that the vast majority of people can just get a fasting insulin checked in their blood once every 3 to 6 months. That's going to give them all the information that they need.
Is that typical in the metabolic health screen that you would do on an annual?
100%, especially if the patient is overweight or obese, if they have metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, high blood pressure, hypertension, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. If they have any of those things, if they have acanthosis nigricans, if they have acne, if they have keratosis pilaris, if they have any number of skin conditions, eczema, psoriasis, I would also check a fasting insulin. If they have any kind of gut symptoms, I would also check a fasting insulin. If they have any kind of mental health diagnoses, I would also check a fasting insulin. If they have any kind of chronic joint complaints that are not directly attributable to a specific injury, I would also check a fasting insulin level on them, because a hyperinsulinemia, which is what we're looking for, is ubiquitous. Like if you just picked up 100 random friends, Coach Allan, who are just eating whatever and living their life, their insulin level is going to probably be above what I consider normal. And we talk about that in the book. Optimal is anything under 10. Now, LabCorp Quest says, well, as long as your fasting insulin's under 25, that's technically normal. I disagree completely with that. I think that your fasting insulin ought to be at least under 10 and preferably approaching 5. Then you know that you're metabolically healthy.
Well, one of the things you said that I think is really important, I want to jump on, because this is my opinion. I wish we didn't have the diagnosis of prediabetes and then type 2 diabetes, because once someone has once someone has prediabetes, for most intents and purposes, the doctor expects them to eventually have type 2 diabetes. It's like you've been told you're on the sliding board already going down. You're going to go down to the bottom whether you want to or not. And that's just not true. We need to start acting while we have that diagnosis of prediabetes, because that's when we have the best opportunity.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. The medical research is very clear, Coach Allan. When you have prediabetes, which I think we should call early type 2, you are doing damage. This was proven at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Memphis, Tennessee. They did a study in veterans with prediabetes. So that would mean your A1C somewhere between 5.7 and 6.4. They studied these guys. They were absolutely doing damage to their kidneys, to their eyes, to their heart, to the small vessel, the small arteries that feed their toes. It was documented that. And so a lot of doctors act like, well, you've got prediabetes, just try to eat a little better and we'll check it again next year. No, you are doing permanent damage to every tiny artery in your body if your A1C is above 5.6. I think that we should rename prediabetes early diabetes, and I think we should rename type 2 diabetes carbohydrate overdose syndrome, because if you called it that, that would help every patient to immediately understand what they have and also how to fix it, right?
Yeah, you're right. So let's jump into cholesterol, because you did a really, really deep dive into the cholesterol panels. Most of the time we go in for a standard panel, and it's the LDL, the HDL, and the total. And the LDL is typically just a calculated number after they have the HDL and the total. Those are, I'm not going to say those aren't important numbers, but they don't really tell the whole story of what's going on. And you could be completely outside the reference range, but not actually be at risk. Talk a little bit about the pattern B and the pattern A. And then, of course, I wanted so much here. We could go on and on and on, but if you could just kind of get through all that, because I think that explanation is really important for someone to understand that there's depth, a whole level of depth here that we often miss. And the statins come out, the prescription is 7 minutes, boom, you're on the statin, whether it works or not, whether the side effects are going to ruin your life or not. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So let's first of all talk about this, just the standard lipid panel. That's going to consist of a total cholesterol, an LDL cholesterol, an HDL cholesterol, and triglycerides. And then they'll typically have 2 or 3 other little calculated ratios. There are 2 things on the standard lipid panel that are vital that you understand and that you control. One is your triglycerides. If your triglycerides are high, you are metabolically unhealthy by definition. If your HDL cholesterol, that's what some doctors call the good cholesterol, if it's low, you're metabolically unhealthy. You need to fix that. And there are discrete ways by changing your diet that you can work on fixing that. Most doctors only focus on the LDL cholesterol and or the total cholesterol. And again, the reason they focus only on that is because that's what the drug companies have taught them to focus on. Doctors want to be useful to their patients. And the only tool that doctors have in their box, most doctors, is a prescription pad. All they can do to help you is to write you a prescription. There is no prescription drug that raises HDL. There are no good prescription drugs that lower triglycerides meaningfully. So they focus on the two lab values that they can have an effect on, which is LDL and total cholesterol. That's the statins and the PCSK9 inhibitors like Repatha and Praluent. That's the only tool they have. They don't know how to lower your triglycerides and raise your HDL at the same time because there's no pill or shot or injection that does that. Now, so what I recommend for most people, if their doctor freaks out because their LDL is high, ask for 2 additional tests. One is an NMR lipoprofile, which is the more detailed look at not only what your LDL was, but it's going to look at particle size and particle numbers. That's the first test. The second test is to ask for a CAC scan, a coronary artery calcium scan, which is a very quick CAT scan that doesn't give you nearly as much radiation exposure as a full CAT scan. It only takes like 2 minutes literally to do the test once you're in the scanner. And then they can see how much calcified plaque you have in your heart arteries. And if that's 0, then even according to the American Heart Association, regardless of what your LDL cholesterol is, you don't need a statin. If your CAC score is 0 or very, very low, you're not going to benefit from the statin. That's very important to understand. Now, when you do the NMR lipoprofile and it breaks down your LDL particles into the different sizes and different numbers, basically what you want to have, even though your LDL may be high, if it's predominantly large, fluffy, light and large particles, you're still metabolically healthy. And you're almost certainly not going to benefit from a statin, even if your LDL is high, if your particles are large and fluffy. And so that we go into much more detail in the book. And it's hard to wrap your mind around that just by hearing somebody talk about it. Yeah. I think it's much better to have that little chart and that the paragraphs in front of you so you can kind of make sense of it. And I'll tell you, Coach Allan, to be perfectly honest, I still consider the lipoprofile breakdown to be somewhat experimental. I think it can give patients more peace of mind. And it could also, if the doctor sees, you've got a 0 CAC score and your particles are large and fluffy, then I'm more comfortable not giving you a statin. So I think it's really more for doctor comfort than it is for patient health to check those 2 additional things. But there's a lot of people that they're just not going to take a statin no matter what. They've either had a bad experience with it, or they've had a friend or a family member who had a bad experience with Zocor, Lipitor, Crestor, and they're just not going to take it. And so asking the doctor to order those additional tests can not only open up more conversation between the patient and the doctor, and we'll try to help the patient get past that 7-minute limit of the office visit, maybe get an extra minute or 2 of conversation in before they get kicked out. But it also will help the doctor kind of maybe start to look into human physiology and molecular biology again, because many doctors, once they graduate residency, they never think about that stuff again, and that's inappropriate.
Yeah, it's the pharmaceutical companies saying if this then that, see this
that's
number,
right.
The big number, so you do this, and we want to lower that number because, well, no real reason other than it's more prescriptions and more revenue.
Yeah.
But we'll go from 200 to 100 and just call that good. So a lot of it is it's business, big business in the medical industry, and very unfortunate. But yeah, that coronary artery calcium scan, I think, is probably one of the most important tests that you should be having. And you can have that over time as well to see how you're trending. And it's age appropriate, the brackets that you had in the book. So yes, if you're 65, your CAC is going to be a little bit different than it would be for the standard 40-year-old, and very different than it would be for the 20-year-old. Okay. So we got all this information, and the doctors want to give us the medications, but really the best thing for us is the lifestyle interventions. That's what's going to make the most impact with the least bad side effects. I mean, if weight loss and feeling stronger and having more energy and all those things are bad side effects, well, I don't know. But those are the side effects of some of these lifestyle changes. You talked about the proper human diet. What are some other lifestyle interventions we should be making besides getting ourselves on the proper human diet?
Yeah, and there are several other interventions that someone can do to improve their metabolic health, but I want to be very clear about this. Dietary changes, permanent, meaningful dietary changes are 80% of the battle. Okay. And in many cases, that's 100% of the battle for millions of people around the world who have early diabetes, prediabetes. If they clean up their diet, it goes completely away and stays away. That's it. That's all they literally don't have to join the gym. They don't have to buy the blue blocker glasses or buy the red light therapy or buy the sauna or buy any of the other stuff, because here, let me tell everybody listening a little secret. Everybody's here to make money off you. Okay. I'm one of the very few people that doesn't have his own line of nutraceuticals, or doesn't have his own red light or blue blockers or this or that or this. I don't have any of that. I've got one product I designed, which is mineral drops. And then I've got 2 or 3 other products that I ever even talk about, because I'm not here to make $1 million. I'm here to save the lives of 1 million people. And so you have to understand, yes, the pharmaceutical company, they make billions. They are the biggest problem. They're trying to make money off you. But on the other side, if you go completely anti-pharmaceutical, there are people over there trying to sell you $100 worth of supplements, trying to sell you a $500 red light module, or trying to sell you a $2,000 sauna. Everybody's trying to make money off you. Once you understand that and understand, yeah, I don't need the vast majority of those pharmaceuticals, but also I don't need the vast majority of those supplements and those hacks and biohacks. I don't need those either. 80% of my metabolic health improvement is going to come by me growing up and fixing my diet and keeping it fixed from now on. That's 80% of your benefit. So I don't talk much about any other interventions, but the next intervention, which I consider a 15% benefit, is exercise, being more active, trying to get stronger, trying to move faster. Yes, it's super important for hundreds of different things inside your body. Absolutely. But if you're metabolically sick, that a dietary intervention is the biggest intervention that you can possibly do. So I obviously want everybody to get up off the couch, out of the lazy boy, start moving your body, start lifting heavier things, start trying to get faster and get more fit. Yes, 100%. But that's not going to help you lose weight. It will help lower your insulin a little, but not nearly as much as fixing your diet. And so what I don't want to happen is for people to go, well, I really like eating the junk I'm eating. I'm going to buy all these supplements and I'm going to get a membership to the gym, and I'm going to get these blue blockers and this red light thing, and I'm going to buy these other weird, herbs and roots and berries. And my naturopath said I need all these herbs. I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on all that, but I'm not really going to change my diet. You've just wasted thousands of dollars and you haven't improved your health at all. 80% of the battle is your diet, getting it right and keeping it right. And if you're ignoring that, you're wasting a bunch of time and money, and you're spinning your wheels. You're not really improving your health at all.
Dr. Berry, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
Fix your diet. Get your butt up out of the chair and move more. Get sunlight. Get your bare feet on the ground. I think those 4 interventions, with the first one I said first being far and away the most important, which is fix your diet and keep it fixed. That's going to give 99% of your listeners all the health improvement benefits they want. Here's the thing, Coach Allan. A lot of people, when you say, hey, you need to get up off the couch, you need to move more, they're so inflamed and they're so metabolically ill. Their insulin level is so high. Their inflammatory markers are so high that it's almost crass and crude and disrespectful to tell that person, hey, you need to move more. You need to join the gym. You need to go for a walk. They are miserable. And they're going to remain miserable until they get the inflammatory junk out of their diet. And yes, that includes all the ultra processed stuff that comes in a cardboard box. But for many people, it includes natural sources of sugar like fruit juice and fruit juice smoothies and lots of starchy vegetables. Those are junk too for many, many people, especially people that fatten easily, who develop prediabetes or type 2 diabetes easily. They don't need any of that stuff. That is not health food for them. They need to focus on nutrient-dense foods that are very low in carbohydrates. And only then will they feel like, because what's going to happen when they start eating a very low carbohydrate, nutrient-dense, uninflammatory diet, Coach Allan, their levels of inflammation are going to start coming down. Their mental health is going to improve, right? That chronic joint inflammation or gut inflammation or skin inflammation, all that's going to get better. And of course, they're going to lose weight because they cut the carbs, which is going to lower their insulin level. Now, after doing that diet for a month, guess what they feel like doing? It's almost magical. I've seen this thousands of times. That person who was just irritable and crotchety and achy and stiff, all of a sudden, they feel like exercising. And I want to tell every health and fitness guru out there, everybody would love to feel like exercising. They would love to feel like that, but many people don't feel like it. They are miserable. So don't come at them first with an exercise intervention. No, they're not going to be able to sustain that because it hurts when they exercise. They're also at a higher risk of injury if you come at them right out of the gate with an exercise intervention. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You've got to fix the underlying inflammation. You've got to fix the underlying hyperinsulinemia, and you've got to fix the underlying carbohydrate overdose that's leading to them feeling miserable. Then, once you've removed those things, everybody wants to be fit. Who doesn't want to be fit? They might lie and say they don't want to be fit, but that's a big fat lie. Of course they want to be out there running and playing in the yard and going to the park and running and chasing the dog, chasing their kids, chasing their grandkids. Everybody wants that, but you can't start there. You've got to fix your diet first and lower the levels of insulin and inflammation, brain fog, and other things that just make you feel like yuck when you try to exercise. Then you're back to baseline metabolic health. You're like, yeah, let's go outside and play. Everybody wants to do that, but you can't start there in many cases.
Well, again, I think this book is something that everybody should have on their bookshelf. You can buy a copy for your doctor. I don't know that he's going to read it, but you can sure buy him a copy to let him know that you want him to know more about these things. But so, Dr. Berry, if someone wanted to learn more about you, your excellent YouTube channel, this excellent book, Common Sense Labs, where would you like for me to send them?
So if you have any medical condition, if you will just go to YouTube and in the little search box, type in Dr. Berry and whatever medical condition you have questions about, I probably have a video or three about that. I've got over 1,600 videos on my YouTube channel. And then, so that's a great place. If you would like to see snarky Dr. Berry in action, I've got a Twitter or an X account. If you'd like to see loving and helpful Dr. Berry, I've got a Facebook page and an Instagram page. But if you want information, then it's the YouTube channel. Type in Dr. Berry and whatever, diabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, whatever. I probably have a video or two or three about that. And then also we have this really great thing for people who have no family support. Because you know as well as I do, Coach Allan, that a lot of people, they're trying to get healthier, right? But their spouse is not helpful. They're actually trying to trip them up. Their parents, their sisters and brothers, their neighbors, their good friends, they're not trying to help them. They're trying to make them a cake and bring it to them and act like that's a nice thing to do for somebody. If you need that extra support, then we've got a private community that's got thousands of people from all over the world who are on this journey to rediscover a proper human diet. If you just go to phdhealth.community, you can join at 3 different levels. So whatever you can afford. Also, you can just go to my website, Dr. Berry, drberry.com, and you can join our community from there and then find out about the other books I've written and the other stuff that I'm up to. Because I've got my finger in many pies, so to speak, but they're all keto or carnivore pies. And I'm actually one of the founding board members of the American Diabetes Society, which is directly competing with the American Diabetes Association, because you can follow the American Diabetes Association's recommendations and their recipes for years, and you'll still have type 2 diabetes. But if you follow the recommendations and the recipes and the food plans that we have on the American Diabetes Society's website, you will reverse your type 2 diabetes, and then you won't have it anymore. And then you won't have to be partners for life with the ADA. So check out the ADS instead.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Berry. And thank you for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness again.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, Coach Allan.
Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we might meet Heike Yates and discuss her book, Pursue Your Spark, your guide to escaping midlife traps, reclaiming confidence, and living fully. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.